My name is Walter Edwards. I'm the director of the Humanities Center. And I was just telling uh, Professor Baltes that I'm so grateful for him to spend the time to come and talk to us today. I mean, it's a difficult time to come and give a talk. So it's the first week after we've come back on campus. And then today is the last day of the president's term, and a lot of people are focusing on that. And tomorrow is the inauguration, and people are focusing on that. And then, I mean, our personal gratitude goes out to him because he's not only a professor in a very, very talented department, and therefore has to be doing his research and teaching and to keep up, but he's also an associate provost with a very difficult portfolio. Difficult and challenging, but I'm sure extremely rewarding to serve faculty in the way he is. So he's taken the time to come and give us a talk, and I'm going to follow his directions. He asked for a little bit that I could read, and he gave me a very short resume. And that is probably because he's a modest man, and I will respect that. I wouldn't tell you all the things that he has done, but he is an associate provost of faculty affairs and a professor of psychology here at Wayne State. His major research interests include examining biases in performance appraisal, age, and workplace issues, and the area of work-family conflict. He came to us in 1978, having received his MBA from the University of Wisconsin and his PhD from Northern Illinois University. His work has appeared in many journals. He has published over 70 articles, and his work includes many journals, including Journal of Applied Psychology, Organizational Behavior and Human Decision Processes, Journal of Management, and the Journal of Organizational Behavior. He has been an associate editor of the Journal of Organizational Behavior and a guest editor of the Journal of Business and Psychology, and is on the editorial board of various journals. He's also a fellow of the Society for Industrial Organizational Psychology. So I'll stop there with his review, but being a full professor in a major research university will tell you that he is extremely well published. Today, his talk will be on examining the role of coping behaviors in reducing work-family conflict. So thank you, Professor Baltes, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invite. As I said earlier, it's nice to be able to talk about research. As you mentioned, I don't have that much time for this, for focusing on research, but it's nice to be able to share it. I'm going to share my screen now, and hopefully this will work. So I'm getting the slides up. So can everyone see the title slide?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Great.
Yes.
So as Dr. Edwards said, my topic today is looking at coping behaviors. These are individual level coping behaviors and how they might be used to reduce work-family conflict. I want to share with you probably at least 15 years now of research in this area. So I'm going to go through multiple studies, just touching on each one to kind of hopefully tell a little bit of a story about these coping behaviors and how they're related to work-family conflict. So again, just a little bit of an overview. We're going to talk about a specific set of coping behaviors, called selection optimization and compensation is really the larger model. And obviously, you can tell from the title, we want to see, are they related to reduce work-family conflict? So if people engage in them, do they actually, are they able to reduce work-family conflict? You can look at potential moderators of this relationship. So things, there'll be certain situations where maybe the use of these coping behaviors are more efficacious than others. Also, there's a lot of research, especially about personality variables and how they're related to levels of work-family conflict. We want to kind of see how these coping behaviors fit into a larger nomological net, if you will. And then probably the most recent study I want to talk about is we did look how coping behaviors in dyads, so couples who are both working, how do their coping behaviors, especially in the home arena, how do they impact each other as well as their own levels of work-family conflict. And then if we have time, I can talk a little bit about some future directions. I have to be honest, it actually made me a little, I realized that the future directions are things I've been wanting to do for a couple of years now, and they keep falling the back burner, but there's still things I'd like to do. So just so we're all on the same page, I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with what work-family conflict is. Basically, right, you can have two roles. And by the way, people now also call it work-life conflict because it can be anything outside of life, but traditionally it was focused more on the work-family conflict. So you have demands from both roles, and the resources just aren't there to meet the demands of both roles. And so that results in conflict. The reason why I think, especially for organizational psychologists like myself, why we're concerned about this is there's a lot of negative outcomes associated with work-family conflict. And I'll just have a few of them up there. On the work side, if you will, you could have decreased job performance, decreased job satisfaction, burnout, organizational withdrawal. On the family side, there's decreased life satisfaction, decreased marital satisfaction. There's also been research that has shown the negative impact of parents' work-family conflict on their children. So again, a lot of not very positive outcomes if you experience work-family conflict. And so it's been something that, at least in our field, has probably for 40 years, at least 30 to 40 years, been something that people are interested in, organizations are interested in, and trying to help employees deal with these challenges. And at least initially, most of the attempts to reduce work-family conflict were ones that were organizational level. So they were things that the organizations did. I have a few examples right there. Flexible work hours, on-site daycares, teleworking, job sharing, lots of things have been put into place. And the research, though, has shown that these organizational policies, and again, it varies, but they're definitely not the silver bullet that people were hoping that they would be. We could have a whole talk on why that might be the case. Things like the culture of the organization, right? We can put flex time into place, but if the supervisors aren't supportive of it, then obviously it's not going to have much of an impact. But for whatever reason, again, they haven't been the silver bullet that people kind of hoped. And so probably, at least I saw maybe late 90s, early 2000s, that's also when I got involved along with colleagues and graduate students. And was thinking about, okay, what else could be out there, so to speak, to help people with managing work-family conflict. And so we were looking at individual level things that people could do, not just organizational level policies. And by the way, I just want to say, I'm not trying to say these organizational level policies are not very positive. They are. They should be in place. It's just a question of what else potentially people could do to handle this. So I along with some graduate students at the time, this was early 2000s, we thought there might be a model out there already on coping behaviors that might be useful. You can see these are two other Balteses where I stole this from, so to speak. This model came out of the gerontology or developmental psychology literature, and it was really a focus more on aging. As you can imagine, in the aging process, especially when you get to the oldest old, there's a lot of resource issues that come up, resource challenges. So the question is, how do you successfully age, if you will? And again, it's based on the idea that resources are either declining or they're limited, and you have to figure out how can I best manage the situation. And so we thought, well, that sounds a lot like work-family conflict. You have the same issue. You have resources that are stretched or not enough resources. So we thought, why don't we apply this model, the basic, general framework, to the work-family conflict literature. And just to give you a little bit more information on the SOC model, as it's called, there's really three components, even though you can see selection is divided into two subcomponents. But you should think of these coping behaviors as working as an ensemble, so that you should be engaging in all of these behaviors. And you'll look at them, and it's not rocket science. It's not something that you might not have thought of yourself when you think about handling resource limited situations. So you got selection. A lot of this is just determining what's the goal hierarchy. What am I going to focus on? What am I not going to focus on? What am I going to potentially leave out of my goal structure? And you can see, again, there's two subcomponents. There's elective selection and loss-based selection. Optimization is really, okay, I have a goal hierarchy, I have a goal structure, I know what I want to achieve. How can I optimize my current resources, my skills? What new skills could I acquire, as an example? Could I model after other successful individuals that I've seen handle this well, to really optimize, again, my resources? And then compensation is really, and again, if you think more about it more in the aging arena, you can see that, okay, I can do selection, I can do optimization, but I still may be in a situation where I'm still not at the level I'd like to be at. So compensation comes in, again, it's compensatory processes that help me still achieve a certain level of functioning, even with potential losses or resource limitations. And so again, an example here is the use of assistance or help. And I'll give some examples that are a little bit more specific to the work-family arena a little later. So our basic idea was just that, if you're engaging in these coping behaviors, again, hopefully managing your resources, optimizing them, compensating when necessary, that should reduce job-family stressors. Job and family stressors are really the main predictor, if you will, of work-family conflict.
Boris, excuse me.
Sure.
Boris,
Yeah.
could you speak into your mic directly, because the sound is going in and out?
Oh, is the sound going out? Okay. Hold on a second. Is this better?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I'm going to do it this way. Okay. All right. Where was I? Oh, okay. So again, our idea was that SOC would be related to job and family stressors. So that the more SOC or the more coping behaviors you engage in, the less job and family stressors you should experience, and then in turn, less work-family conflict. And so this was our first kind of basic hypothesis that we worked off of. And again, let me just give you a little bit more specific examples of strategies within the work-family conflict domain. These are actually strategies because we've done some qualitative research on this as well, and so we've had focus groups and we asked them about behaviors they engage in, and these would fall. So you have again, examples of elective selection, focus on limited number of work goals. I have here only focus on immediate family. That may be possible or not. Actually, as an interesting side note, when we do examine using these coping behaviors at work versus at home there's a lot less elective selection that seems to be engaged in, probably because it's tough to do that, whereas at work, sometimes you have more options. Examples of optimization here, again, determine what individual skills could be improved, one thing we hear a lot is people model their behavior after successful others. So they see someone else who they think is dealing with these challenges effectively, and so they try to figure out, or they may talk to this person and ask them for strategies for what they do. So again, that'd be an example of optimization. And then compensation, again, it's really trying to have assistance or help. So in the work domain, that might be delegating more, or asking peers to do more potentially. Use of household help would be an example of help. And again, just really quickly, in terms of measurement of SOC, it's measured in multiple ways, but probably the two that you'll see the most is just self-report questionnaires. And the research that I'm going to share with you today, all of them have used self-report questionnaires to measure SOC. There's different questionnaires, but they all range in length, usually from 12 to 48 items. And then the other way it has been done is it has been observed. And this is, you'll see this more again in the aging arena, where people have actually gone into sometimes senior homes and actually observe how individuals are behaving, and then see how some individuals they're observing more SOC type behaviors in some individuals than others, and then relating that to outcomes. So the first study that we had was way back in 2003, which is hard for me to imagine. It's already 17 years ago or 18. But basically, again, we were interested in examining individuals' use of SOC. And you'll see here, we divided it out into work SOC. So we asked people at work, what do you engage in these behaviors? But then we also do it at home. Do they engage in those behaviors? These two things are correlated, but they're definitely not the same. They're correlated usually like we see around 0.6 or so, 0.5. There are different levels of SOC that the same person engages in at work and home. It's not the same. And then we have job stressors, family stressors. And then I should just point out, in the work-family conflict arena, at least within psychology, it's pretty accepted now that we look at two directions within work-family conflict. So we look at work interfering with family, and family interfering with work, which is FWIF and FIW. I put here just the participants because it gives you an idea of, for most of the studies, this is kind of the sample that we're looking at. We're usually interested in someone who's either in a serious relationship with a partner and or has children. Because again, we're interested in work family conflict, so we're assuming there's something that would potentially lead to conflict. But it can be any of those combinations that you see there. So just really quickly, this is again the model, but now with the actual estimates. You see it says model 2, that's because we had multiple models with different control variables. But they all kind of tell pretty much the same story, so I'm just sharing one with you. And basically you see we have support for our basic hypotheses, right? So engaging in work SOC or family SOC relates to lower levels of job stressors and family stressors, which in turn, because of the relationship between job stressors and work interfering with family, and family stressors and family interfering with work, leads to less of that. So we had the basic results that we were assuming or hypothesizing, but I will point out two things. One is, well, actually I should probably go to manage my slides. So from this first study, we did conclude that the basic hypotheses were supported. Use of SOC behaviors or these coping strategies was related to less job and family stressors, in turn, less work interfering with family conflict and family interfering with work conflict. But two issues or limitations with this was the use of cross-sectional data. And if you notice on the previous slide, those effects of the use of the coping strategies on job and family stressors were small. They were significant, but they were small. And I bring that up because, as an IO psychologist, a lot of times we're always thinking about applying what we're looking at. And obviously one of the things you could apply this type of research would be, can I train people on these coping strategies? But you only really want to do that if it has a significant or meaningful impact, right? If it's something that only has really small effects, is it really worth it to do that? So it was something that we were concerned with at the time. So we started moving forward. First off, just because it was cross-sectional data, we did a longitudinal study. Again, you have the participants there, very similar to the other participants I had. Our procedure here was that we basically had people that we got 2 time points. I'm sorry, 3 time points. And there's a lag of 5 weeks between each wave. And you'll see what we basically stock. We measured work interfering with family, family interfering with work, job stressors, and then the SOC question. So there's a couple ways you can look at longitudinal data. One very kind of just basic way would be to say, I'm going to look at SOC at time 1, I'm going to look at job stressors or family stressors at time 2, and then I'm going to look at the work family conflict measure, whichever direction, at time 3. So we did that first, and basically our idea was that we should find the same relationships we found before, just across time. And so that's what we did first. So you'll see SOC at time 1 is related negatively to job stressors at time 2. And by the way, I'm just showing you the work side right here, but the family side was similar. And then job stressors at time 2 are related to work interfering with family at time 3. So again, we get support for the basic idea that the use of these coping strategies are related to lower job stressors and in turn related to lower work family conflict. One nice thing about this is the relationships were a little stronger between SOC and job stressors, which was nice. But obviously with longitudinal data, you could do many more things. You could argue more appropriate things to try to really look at change, like can the use of SOC behaviors actually predict change in my levels of work family conflict? So that's what we did next. This is a little complicated. Hopefully you can read this. But basically here, we looked at SOC at the 3 time points. Then we have work family conflict at the 3 time points. And we're looking really whether, because we have like work family conflict at time 1, predicting work family conflict at time 2, we're really talking about change in work family conflict, right? That's all that's left over. That's what we can predict. And so this is a pretty tough, or not tough, but this is a very rigorous test of does SOC really relate to a change in my level of work family conflict? And you can see the relationships are small, but they are there. So this would be the strongest longitudinal evidence you would have that the use of SOC is related to lower levels of work family conflict. One other thing we were interested in, by the way, was just, because again, you can argue that I might engage in SOC more or I engage in coping behaviors more if my work family conflict is increasing, right? If all of a sudden somebody dumps all these projects on me, right? And now I have to figure out what to do, or something happens at home that might take me away from work, whatever it might be, do I start engaging in more coping behaviors? So we were looking the other direction. So from work family conflict to SOC, we were interested and we thought that there might be a positive relationship. You can see we don't really find that. If anything, we found a negative relationship from work family conflict at time 2 to SOC at time 3. We really don't have a good explanation for that, but it wasn't what we expected to find. So, sorry, I'm just going to go back. So again, we now have some longitudinal evidence for these relationships, which is one of the things we wanted to address with the first study. The second thing, if you remember that I talked about, the limitation was the small effect sizes, right? So we started thinking about, well, what could be the reasons for those small effect sizes in the use of coping strategies?
Boris, you're still going in and out every now and then.
Still am. Okay. I may need this because I got to get back to, let's see. Okay, is that any better or is that worse? Can anybody hear me?
That's a little worse.
That's a little worse. So we're not going that direction. So again, I'll try this.
Yes, that sounds better.
In and out, yeah.
Okay. All right, just let me know again. I can try to put my headphones in again. I apologize. I'm not sure what's causing that. All right. So again, we were interested in why there were these small effects, and could there be situations when the use of coping behaviors would be more efficacious, if you will, than other times. And so when you go back and look at some of the original writings on these coping behaviors and the SOC model, there was the idea that it really should only matter, well, I mean matter if you're using these coping strategies or not, if you are in a situation where you need to. So if you're in a resource limited situation or resource stretched situation, it should matter whether you're using these coping strategies. If you are in a really great situation with lots of resources, it shouldn't really matter whether you use these coping strategies or not, right? And so what we did is we looked at all the data we had from different studies, and we looked at, do we have variables in there that would be a good proxy for the demand on one's resources or the supply of resources, either or. And we did find we had variables from different studies that were, you could say, are good proxies for this. And so then we examined them as potential moderators. I'll give you a few of those. So one was youngest child at home. There's a lot of research that shows the younger age child you have at home, and anyone who has younger children at home right now can probably identify with this. The more work-family conflict experience, the more resources that are needed. And so our argument would be, as a moderator, we could look at those individuals who have younger children at home versus those individuals who have older children at home. And we would expect the use of these coping strategies to be more effective for those with younger age children at home. We also had family-friendly policies. So these are family-friendly policies of work, different types of policies, flex time, childcare, whatever it might be. And again, if you have lots of these policies at your work, that would be a more resource-rich environment. If you don't have many of these policies at work, it would be a resource-limited environment, I guess, or stretched. And so again, we would expect individuals who don't have many family-friendly policies, for them, when they're engaging in SOC, it should be more effective or more needed, if you will. And then we also had supervisor support. And this is supervisor support primarily for work-family challenges. So how supportive is your supervisor? Again, the argument would be, if you have a very supportive supervisor, it probably matters less whether you're using these coping behaviors or not. So we use these three as, we actually had some others too, but I'm going to focus on these three and show you some of the results so that hopefully you'll be able to see. Am I still going in and out?
Yes.
All right.
Kind of lets you know what our students went through the last couple of semesters.
Oh, I know. No, I'm going to try with my head. That helps.
At least I can still follow you. You get quiet, but it's not like you're totally cut out.
Okay, is that No?
Not really.
You're muffled.
Yeah, almost echoey.
What?
Nobody can hear me now?
I hear you, but it sounds echoey. Maybe that's just me.
Okay. Can everybody mute for a second?
It's an echo.
It's
Okay, I muted everyone. So Boris, you can unmute yourself and then we can continue.
All right, how's that? Is this better now?
It's better, but I guess we can continue.
All right, well, I apologize again. I'm not sure why this is happening. Is it better with my headphones, or was it better before when I didn't use them?
I think right now is pretty doable. I think we'll all be patient and flexible with you. So thank you.
All right. The only thing I could do is maybe All right. I will try to talk really loud. How's that?
That works.
All right. Let's try that. See if we keep going here. Okay. So this is a good test of my presentation skills. I have to get back in and out and now. All right. So what were the results here? Okay, so this is basically, so this is one for the youngest child at home as a moderator. And if you see, we got family SOC, they're on the horizontal axis. On the vertical axis, we have family stressors. And then we have our three groups. The yellow line are the individuals with younger age children at home. The blue line is with medium age children at home. And the purple line is with older age children at home. So you see, it's kind of exactly what we were predicting, that for those individuals with the younger age children at home, the relationship, that minus 0.38 that you see between SOC, in this case it's family SOC and family stressors, is much stronger than it is for the people with the older age children at home. All right. So we basically have supported the idea that if you're in a situation where the resources are more stretched, that the use of these coping strategies are much more effective. Now, I will point out, those people with the younger age children at home, they're still always more stressed than the people who have the older age children at home, right? I mean, because you can see where their line is. But if they use the coping strategies, it has a much bigger impact in reducing their family stressors. And basically, I'm going to show you almost what's going to be like the exact same graph 3 times, because we have the same thing. Here, though, the people with, this is a family SOC, family stressors. This is a low number of benefits, is a purple line, and the yellow line is a large number. And these are those family friendly benefits. So again, the people who are in the resource limited situation, the low number of benefits, the relationship is much stronger than for those with a large number of benefits. So again, supporting it. And then the supervised support was the same thing. Those individuals with a yellow line where the relationship is minus 0.30, so the strongest relationship, that's the people with a low level supervisor support. So again, we got the same basic result happening with all our moderators here. So this was kind of important for us because it really meant that it is important to examine these coping behaviors. Using these coping behaviors is important and can have an impact, especially for those individuals who are in a very unscientific term to use, but the worst situations, right? The ones where they don't have a supportive supervisor, they have low number of benefits and so forth. So for us, it was really, it gave us an impetus to say, yeah, we need to keep looking into this and keep studying it. So then one question that came up, and it was really brought up by reviewers with multiple papers we had, they were interested in where does SOC or these coping behaviors fit into the larger picture. And what I mean by that is there's been a lot of research that's examined other predictors of work-family conflict, other things that relate to work-family conflict. One of those, or many of those, being personality type variables. And so that's what we wanted to look at next to see, is SOC a mediator of these relationships or not, was really the basic question. And again, these personality variables have been related to work-family conflict, include things like locus of control, conscientiousness, negative affectivity. These are things that if you relate it to work-family conflict, you'll see like individuals with higher negative affectivity also tend to always report higher levels of work-family conflict. People higher in conscientiousness tend to report lower levels and sometimes, or agreeableness as well as another one. Now, most people have just thought that these personality variables, the reason they're related to work-family conflict is because work-family conflict is usually measured in a perceptual fashion. So I'm asking you about your levels of work-family conflict, that the way these personality variables relate to it is they just impact the way I perceive the world around me, which I think you could totally buy for negative affectivity, right? If you know people that are high in negative affectivity, they could win the lottery and there'd still be something negative about it, right? There's always, so you have this idea that these personality variables just may influence the way I perceive what's going on around me. But you could argue, especially for some of these personality variables, maybe they also impact the behaviors that I engage in. And so that's really where we were testing whether that was the case. And so Again, the participants very similar to what you saw before. In this scenario, we measured the SOC. We had the long form for various reasons. We had work-family conflict, both directions. And then we had the 5 personality variables that have been found to be most strongly related to work-family conflicts. We got this from a meta-analysis that was done. And they're negative affectivity, locus of control, emotional stability, agreeableness, and conscientiousness. And our basic model looked like this. We thought, okay, we have our 5 personality variables, and we thought that at least for some of them, their relationship with work-family conflict should be mediated by work SOC or family SOC, or at least SOC could be one of the possible mediators of this relationship. And we specifically thought this was the case for locus of control, agreeableness, and conscientiousness, because those have been related to behaviors that people engage in as well. Now, for negative affectivity and emotional stability, we thought they might be mediated, but those are the ones that are the most, you could argue, should be most related to just how I perceive things, right? And so we're thinking that there might still be direct effects, not just mediated effect. And I know there's only one arrow, but one arrow from like this one box, but we're basically allowing locus of control, for instance, to go to work SOC. We're allowing negative affectivity to go to work SOC and so on. So, we skipped over the good part here. And again, hopefully you can see this. So these are the results. Hopefully you can see that some of these arrows are thicker than others. If you can, that indicates that there was support for mediation. So for instance, from agreeableness, its relationship to work interfering with family was mediated through work SOC. And for conscientiousness, its relationship to both work interfering with family and family interfering with work was mediated through either work SOC or family SOC. And emotional stability, we found some mediation as well. We did not find mediation for locus of control. That just had a direct effect. Negative affectivity, that had direct effects. And locus of control didn't have a direct effect or significant indirect effect in this model. So the basic idea is, again, we find that SOC behaviors are related to lower amounts of work-family conflict. And it looks like SOC might be one, or these coping behaviors might be one of the mediators between these individual difference variables, at least some of them, and work-family conflict. So the last thing I want to share is something that's the most recent, because, and this was a challenge with most work-family conflict research, like everything I've shown you up until this point, we're always getting one side of the coin, right? We're measuring either partner A or partner B by themselves. We're just asking about what they do at work or at home. And we are not usually, at least, gathering any data with respect to the dyad that a person may often be part of. And so we were interested in doing a dyadic study. And this is really a direction that more work-family conflict research is going, because it is a more complete picture, right? We wanted to look at the potential crossover effects. So what we did is we measured SOC, and in this scenario, we did use married couples. And we had the husband and the wife, and again in this data set, and we wanted to see how their use of SOC was related to their own levels of work-family conflict, but also how were there any crossover effects. So like if for instance, partner A or the husband engages in SOC, does that impact their partner's levels of work-family conflict? And again, we're really focused on the family side here, right? That's really where, if you talk about the dyad, it's really the family SOC, so use of coping behaviors at home, and also family interfering with work. And so this is one that we, again, we had 252 dyads. We collected across 2 time points, so 3 weeks apart. And what I'm showing you here, we did have other measures, but we're really interested in SOC and work-family conflict. And so here's our basic idea, our basic model, right? We have husband, we have the wife, we have measurements of SOC at home, then we have a wife's family interfering with work and husband's family interfering with work. And again, we were assuming if you look at H1A and H1B, those two hypotheses, that's just kind of reaffirming what we found in other studies, right? That if I engage in SOC, I should report less family interfering with work. But what we're really interested in a way, is that crossover, right? Is there a positive effect if I engage in it? And basically, that's what we found. So first, we found that yes, there was a positive effect of the husband or wife, if they engage in SOC at home or these coping behaviors at home, they report lower levels of family interfering with work. But then you see there's also significant crossover effects. So if the husband engages in SOC, it is also related to lower levels of family interfering with work for the wife, and the other way around. One thing I'll point out, which is something we're really interested in examining more, you'll see the impact of the husband engaging in these coping behaviors was much stronger on the wife's level of family interfering with work than the other way around. I don't have a good explanation for this yet, but it's something that at least I think is really interesting, and would like to examine further as we move forward. So overall conclusions: the use of SOC behaviors seems to relate to lower amounts of work-family conflict. The use of SOC is most useful for, that's not the best sentence, I should have rewrote that, for those individuals in high stress situations. SOC may be one mediator of the relationship between certain individual difference variables in work-family conflict, and the use of SOC at home can reduce your own as well as your partner's family interfering with work. In terms of some current research, and current's probably being very kind. These are things I've been wanting to do for quite a few years, so we haven't gotten around to. But we are interested in mean level differences in SOC behaviors and gender differences, and also differences in the efficacy of SOC behaviors. What we found, for whatever reason, when we start looking separately at men and women in our data sets that we have, we find a stronger relationship between the use of SOC behaviors, and this is just within, this is not the crossover effects I was talking about, but a stronger relationship between the use of SOC behaviors and reported levels of work-family conflict for males, sometimes much larger, like double the size of what we find for females. And we're really not sure what that means. There's obviously mean level differences in reported levels of work-family conflict. There could be range restriction issues going on. There's all, so I don't want to suggest necessarily that there is a real quote unquote gender difference. I don't know. It's just that we do find these differences when we're looking, and we're trying to figure out why that could be. And then last but not least, what I mentioned in the beginning is we'd like to develop a training intervention to help people make use of these behaviors. We actually have developed one. We have a video. We need to find an organization we can use it in. Actually, what I really need to find is a graduate student really interested in doing this, because that would kind of push it forward. But I think that's one thing we'd really like to try moving forward. And so that's all I have, but I do want to take time out to thank very much all the graduate students who've been involved in this research over the years. And happy to say they're all doctors now and very successful in their own right. But that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Now we reserve this time for question and answer. Feel free to raise your hand. If you don't want to state your question, you can put your question in the chat as well.
Vanessa has her hands up.
Hi, thank you. This is really great. It's great to hear you talking about research, Boris. This is a lot of fun. Thank you. And thank you, Walter, and everybody at the Humanities Center for having us coming together today. So yeah, I guess I wanted to follow up on your thoughts on gender difference. It sounds to me like some of the factors that can account for these different types of results would be either like personality aspects of people's personalities, or it could be availability of other resources. So I guess my question is whether you think those might be factors in the gender difference. And I guess more generally, do specific SOC strategies, are there different strategies that people will deploy depending on what kind of resources they have available, or is there kind of a constant set of what is a SOC strategy?
So let's take the second part, I think, of your question first. So there's definitely your ability to use these strategies is impacted by your environment. So there's another study we did that, because we've related the use of these coping behaviors to job performance actually as well in the workplace. And you will find, or we found, and I know others have found this as well in other studies, that individuals in jobs where they have more autonomy, and a proxy for that might be managerial type jobs, they tend to be able to engage more in SOC and it's more effective for them. Whereas individuals who may be like in a non-managerial role, their ability to engage in SOC is restricted sometimes, right? You may
Is that
not.
what locus of control means? Like how much?
Well,
locus
locus of control as a personality variable is more like how much control you think you have over what is happening to you. Like, do you have agency, if you will, right, in things you're going to do? Whereas in this situation, it's truly job autonomy. It's like, it's not in your head that you don't have control over what you choose to do every day. It's actually your supervisor who's telling you what to do every day, right? And so it's in those situations, you definitely are restricted. There's also been, we've had reviewers bring this up to look at socioeconomic status as something that would definitely impact your ability to be able to use these types of strategies. Because a lot of the research we have suffers from some of the same problems that psychology research suffers in general, which is often we're looking at, especially in these survey type, when you're using samples like Qualtrics and so forth, they could be a lot of managers, a lot of white collar type jobs. So all those things could impact just in general your context. Then if you talk about potential gender differences, I think the same things could hold. But it's really, it's still not something. I had one graduate student who was really interested in this, and she looked at it some, and she looked at it from the point of view of, there has been some research that has shown that there seems to be a difference in the type of coping strategies that, and again, remember, as any gender difference, there's mostly overlap and there's usually little mean differences, right? But that men tend to prefer to engage in and are more comfortable with problem-focused coping strategies, which SOC definitely falls under that heading. And sometimes women may be more engaged in emotion-focused coping strategies, which is not SOC. SOC is not emotion-focused, right? It's really just problem-focused. But honestly, I want to throw that out there. I mean, I don't even, like, I think there's so many things that could be impacting this. I'm really hesitant to throw out that it's a true gender difference at all. I mean, I think you'd have to control for so many other things first before I'd be comfortable in saying, oh, there really is a difference, right? I don't know. I mean, it's, I think you gotta be really careful, right? It's, you know,
Barbara has her hands up.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards. Thank you, Boris, for your presentation. I kind of had a similar question like Vanessa did as it relates to locus of control. So you explained that very well. And the variables, you know, such as gender, and you mentioned socioeconomic status, you know, as well. Race is huge, and power and privilege is as well. So I don't know whether any of those variables, you know, were in any of your research or your hypothesis. And my question is, the mediator effect is you know, a huge question with me. I mean, who's the mediator? Is it someone from the outside that is trying to, be very neutral and third party, which is the mediator? Is it the family dynamics as well as maybe someone from HR or supervisor level as it relates to agency, the mediator, as it relates to the behavior? So I was just curious to know or understand the mediator aspect, the mediator's role or the mediator effect,
Right.
as you referenced in your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. So in the way we were examining it as a mediator of the relationship that has already been found between those personality variables and levels of reported work-family conflict. And we were just interested in, are those personality variables potentially, the way they're impacting work-family conflict is because they actually impact the behaviors that I choose to engage in or choose not to engage in this case, the coping behaviors. I think all the other things you're mentioning as potential, I might think them more of moderators. Actually, these are things that would definitely impact my ability to engage in behaviors. It might also impact the relationship between those personality variables and the coping behaviors. So yes, I mean, there's a lot about the context that I think impacts your ability to use these behaviors, and their potential efficacy, if you will. How what kind of impact do they have? I don't know if that answered your question, or at least try to.
Well,
Okay.
Could I put a question to you, Boris?
Sure. How are you doing?
Well, I found this very stimulating, and I wondered in particular whether there's been any research on work-family conflict that's cross-national. What I'm thinking of is family-friendly policies like paid parental leave and subsidized daycare might substantially reduce conflict. And I wondered whether you in particular might work with German colleagues to conduct research of this nature.
So unfortunately, no. I mean, well, yes, there is definitely cross-cultural, or just maybe a better way to think about it is just multicultural, like looking at these same issues within different cultures. Unfortunately, no, I have not actually done any research, really. I've done other research with German colleagues, but not on this particular issue. But there has been, the use of these coping behaviors has been examined in a couple different, I know in Germany, in the Netherlands, I think South Korea, and a lot of it is revolving around the use of these behaviors and multiple types of different outcomes. So it could be work-family conflict, it could be burnout at work. But I definitely agree that it would be nice to have some more and there are other studies that have been done in other countries that look somewhat similar to ours. But in terms of like a specific cross-cultural comparison, I'm not sure I've seen that actually. Would be a great thing to do.
Do we have any more questions? We have a couple more minutes left. Any more questions?
questions or comments? I see that Ty Partridge says that I consider myself the luckiest man on earth. If he has a comment on that, that would be nice.
No, I was making a reference to the Lou Gehrig echo in the movie where it echoes out, today, right? For those of us over a certain age, remember that if you watch Level. I did have a question though. When you guys were using the SOC survey, is it still the forced choice format within the rating of how much
Yeah,
the force choice represents you, or have you guys gone to a different measurement scale?
we have, so the early studies that I showed would have been still the more traditional, and just for everyone to know, it's basically they give you, here's a sock behavior, here's a non-sock behavior, which one are you most like? And then when you choose that one, then it say, okay, how much are you like this? Whatever you chose. So it gave you more than just a 1 or 2, right? You could actually have a larger scale. That has changed now. Most of the people who measured it just kind of do it more on a Likert type scale, where they put the sock behavior at one end, the non-sock at the other, and you put where you are, in between.
Oh, that's a good idea.
To try to make it a little simpler, also to gather the data. But we're actually, the other thing we are working on, I don't mention here, is we're trying to get a situational judgment test version of this, of SOC behaviors. It's specific to kind of work family, because the measurement of SOC, and again, this is a side note, but the measurement of SOC is, people are still using the original scale, which was really meant to be a very broad scale. And you could argue that it would be much better if you could get it specialized or more in sync with what you're measuring, the arena that you're in. And so people have been trying to do that as well. But
Awesome, thank you.
All right, so if that wraps up our Q&A, Dr. Edwards will do some closing remarks.
No, I just wanted to thank Boris again for taking the time from his very busy schedule to talk to us and to begin our winter Brown Bag series. And I thank him for the quality of the work he has shared and his leadership from in front, because I like the idea that scholars are also, administrators are always also scholars. The scholar-administrator model is the thing that best suits our university. So thank you, Boris, and
thank you.
I hope that other psychologists will come forward and give papers. My friend Joe Fitzgerald has given talks here and will continue to give talks until he decides that he doesn't have anything else to share. But thank you again. And Kennedy, you can give your little closing remarks as well.
Yes, thank you so much for kicking off our winter brown bag series. Very interesting presentation. You have so many kind words in the chat, so before you leave, you definitely have to check that out. But as a small token of our gratitude, the Humanities Center does have 2 gifts for you that we will be presenting to you virtually. It's a journal and a mask with our logo on it. And towards the end of the semester, we'll be reaching out to you individually to safely get these gifts to you. Thank you so much. A great presentation. And we'll definitely be reaching out to you to come back next go round. So, and thank you to our audience for coming. This was a very well-attended talk, and we just appreciate it. We have another talk tomorrow, same time, same link. So you have any last words, Boris?
Just thank you, and I apologize for the audio difficulties.
Of course, it happens. Technology, it's like a double-edged sword, But I think we did pretty good and we managed pretty well. So thank you all and have a wonderful day. Hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. Do you have any last words, anyone? Okay. All right. All right. You're welcome. Everyone have a good one. Bye, everyone. Bye, everyone. All right. Dr. Edwards, did you want to chat before we go? We don't have anything to talk about, but if you wanted to.
Oh, we can talk tomorrow after.
Okay. All right. Well, you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, Kiera. Bye, everyone.